Imagine you have a group of people coming to one of your sessions. Maybe you're facilitating a training session, or maybe you're hosting a collaborative meeting. Before the session, in the session, and after the session, you want your participants to have access to some resources. For example, you'd like them to watch a video before the session. You'd like them to download a PDF, complete it, and be ready to share it. You'd like them to take an online survey, and you're going to be collecting files from them. Maybe they're image files, spreadsheets, or slides. You could send an email to your participants before the session with all of these links. A link to the video, a link to the PDF, or the PDF could be an attachment, a link to the online survey, and a link to an online folder where they'll be uploading their files later. But what if there was a simpler way? What if you could give them all of these resources in just one link? In this video, I'd like to share with you some whiteboard options that we can use in our interactive sessions and when we're presenting content. We'll take a look at pre-session content, in-session content, and post-session content. For this video, I'm using Miro, a whiteboard that contains a lot of collaborative functions and interactive tools. There are other great whiteboards online like Miro that will allow you to replicate these same functions. Keep in mind, there are whiteboards online that may not have all of these functions and capabilities. For pre-session content, you've already seen some things that I prepared for this video. I created images and slides, I uploaded them, I created frames, and those allowed me to present one frame at a time, specifically the content I wanted you to see. We'll take a look at creating and using those frames a little bit later in the video. Let's look at some other pre-session content I've created for my participants to access before the session using this single whiteboard link. I've created some instructions for them. Now, these instructions could be as simple or as complex as needed. I love having my participants access the whiteboard and complete some activities so they're familiar with the functions, knowing that they'll be ready to access and use these functions in the live session. The video I've given them can be played within the whiteboard, or they could pop that out in a separate window. Of course, they can zoom in or zoom out as they see fit. For the PDF I'd like them to access, they can download it directly from the whiteboard, or if it's something they only need to read, they can flip through that PDF on the whiteboard without having to download or save any files at all. For the online survey, that can be accessed directly on the whiteboard. And finally, I have some instructions for them to add a photo from their last trip or their last holiday. It's easy for them to choose a box, to add their name. They can add their photo. And of course, they may need to resize it, which just gives them more familiarity with the actual tools that we'll be using in our live session. And of course, they can add text or change text on why they chose that specific picture. Now, let's talk about in-session content. As a facilitator, I may need to arrange activities, create or upload templates, or add files that we're going to use during the session, but I don't want my participants to look ahead and see it in advance. This is why I love these types of objects that I can use to cover my activities, I can cover my files, and I can lock them as the board administrator. And whenever I'm ready, I can unlock those. I can move that shape to reveal the activities or simply delete that shape altogether. Now, in this sample session, I'm asking breakout groups to upload an activity plan and to have a discussion where their group members are verbally making comments, but writing those comments, writing those questions, and writing those critiques as they have their discussion. Not only is this great for live interaction, but it's great as something we can save later. And you'll see that later as well. Let's imagine that one of these groups has already finished. I can ask Xavier to share with the larger group the plan that he's uploaded and the different comments, questions, or critiques that the group has made. We could make this a short or a long discussion, and this can be saved for future reference as a post-program activity. And as the board administrator, I can choose to lock that content and super lock it so nobody else except me, the administrator, can access that. In-session content could be spontaneous. Imagine we're having a meeting and we want to create a new marketing project. My group decided on the spot they wanted a new marketing project, and I didn't have any activities or templates arranged. Well, not only can I build templates from scratch and save them and reuse them in future sessions and on future boards, a lot of these whiteboards contain templates, and there are hundreds of them, and I can upload them at a moment's notice. I can resize them. I can format them, different colors, different fonts. But on the spot, I could have my team filling this out about the new marketing plan. Now imagine they're deciding who's going to do what. And Susan speaks up and says that she would like to do research. And maybe Bradley speaks up and says that he would like to be in charge of the budget. Wonderful. I can continue adding onto these, and I can continue adding different sections, different lines, different modules as needed if this is the template that works best for my group. Again, I can go back, I can save that, I can lock that, and as you're about to see, I can export that. Let's talk about presenting content and creating content for post-program resources. If I'm the facilitator and I'm sharing my screen, I can simply zoom in and talk about whatever content I want. Or in this case, I could ask Xavier or Xavier's group to talk about their activity. At the same time, I could ask Xavier to share his screen, and he could choose to move around and zoom in and zoom out, allowing us to see what he's seeing. If there were other people on this whiteboard, I have the ability to call them over to my view. So if I'm looking at this view on my laptop, I can force that same view on their laptop. There are some better ways for creating presentation material, and you saw that at the beginning of this video. Let's zoom out. My participants have done a few things, and one of the first things they did were the pre-session activities. There was this photo that they've uploaded. I can take a frame, and I can build that frame around whatever content I want. There are other formatting options to make the background transparent or another color, but right now this is going to be frame 1. And let's imagine I want to go over to Xavier's group. And I like Xavier's activity plan, and I'm going to create a second frame around Xavier's activity plan. And I also want to create a third frame around the group comments. Finally, we started discussing a marketing plan, and I do want to touch on that in my current or future presentation, so I'll build one more frame around that. Now, I have 4 frames on this whiteboard. I can now go over to my frames menu, and I can click on any of these thumbnails, and it will take me automatically to the section of that board where that content is. I can rename these frames, and I can move these frames around. For example, I could move frame number 1 down, so now it would become the second thing that we would see if we were going in that order, but we'll put it back at the original. What you saw at the beginning of this video was the presentation mode. So I'm now going to present frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, and so on. Another great thing about presentation view, as a facilitator, I can choose what tools my participants can use during this presentation mode. For example, I could turn on the pen tool. but I might turn off the sticky tool. This allows the board to look simpler, and it gives or restricts different options for everyone else on this whiteboard. Finally, since I have created these 4 different frames, I can export this board as an image or as multiple images, as a PDF. And if I export it as a PDF, page 1 is frame 1. Page 2 is frame 2. I don't have to include all the other unused or irrelevant material. Finally, thinking about post-program resources, I may contact my group members in the future and tell them, hey, I have a new template. I have a new activity. I would like you to log in and start filling that out over the next week. At the same time, I can choose to restrict their access to edit the board, or to only view the board, or to only view the board and make comments, or I can turn off access altogether as the board administrator. Finally, if you're new to these whiteboards, they might seem a little bit intimidating. There are a lot of functions and a lot of tools that we didn't even start to look at today. I would encourage you to not only play around on these whiteboards and discover them for yourselves, but take a look at the tutorials that these companies offer. Some of them allow you to take online courses for free and earn badges. I also have a 1-hour tutorial about Miro that shows most of the functions that it does, and you can find that in the video descriptions. Happy facilitating and happy learning.